Hey folks, Nathan here. We are again going to take a look at another of these games from Kickstarter, or that were at least funded through Kickstarter, that either I backed at the time, late pledged, or whatever, just to kind of see what kind of cool stuff is out there, and some of these games that I'm enjoying playing that I happen to get through those methods. This one is probably a little bit off the radar for many folks. It is a solo-only game, unless you simply play cooperative and just sort of have two people thinking about it and making the decisions to play it as a solo game. It's a game from Side Room Games called Black Sonata. It was kickstarted back in 2018 with a goal of $6,000. They raised over $90,000 with a $24 copy of the game, plus the shipping as it applied depending on your part of the world, or a $40 version of the pledge, which would actually get your name printed inside the game box as a supporter, though that was limited to 100 pledges. This is one that I effectively late pledged. I basically ordered it off of their website as soon as they made it available, because I am actually a backer now of their second game, Maquis. If this game sounds familiar to you, you may have been paying attention to the 2017 solo print and play game contest over on Board Game Geek. This is the game that won, so in 2018, the next year, they decided why not launch it as a real physical game rather than a P&P game, which sometimes will turn people off, although it's definitely a much cheaper avenue to go. So as a solo game, the idea here is that if you look back at Shakespeare's sonnets, there's a couple of different individuals that show up frequently, one of whom, the one that's still kind of a mystery, is the so-called Dark Lady. There are different people that people think might be the Dark Lady if he was actually talking about a real person. The question is, who was it? Well, historians don't know, but this puts you in the streets of Shakespeare's London to try to solve that mystery as you try to hunt down the Dark Lady and piece together clues to her identity. It's not exactly the kind of theme of game that's going to necessarily grab everyone's attention, right? It's not science fiction, it's not, fantasy, it's not a bunch of miniatures or anything like that. It's Shakespeare. But for someone who's a Shakespeare nerd like me, this was a great find. So let's check out what's in the box, and as we go along, see what the stretch goals managed to provide as an addition for us. So here's the interior of the box. Now I should note, the box is a nice thick cardboard with a linen finish. The thicker cardboard was something that was a stretch goal, along with thicker tokens at the $12,000 mark, and then the linen finish came at the $30,000 mark. And then the box includes an insert, which is originally going to be black, but it was rubbing off on things, so they switched it to white. The insert was the last of their stretch goals at the $60,000 mark. What you're going to find is that for this campaign, and for Maquis for the most part, the stretch goals were designed to be quality of life upgrades, not fundamentally altering the game, nor providing Kickstarter exclusive content. So what you see here is what you would get in a regular retail purchase or off of their website. You notice also, there's that list of Black Sonata benefactors. I have pledged at this level for Maquis. Now inside the game, you're going to find two booklets. This is what you'd expect to see, right? A rules booklet. Okay. Now I must say, the rules can be a little bit confusing for this one, so definitely if you feel confused when you try it, check out a Let's Play. Rado Runs Through does a pretty good rundown of how you actually play that helped clarify things for me, and then I was off to the races playing several games in a row in quick succession. We have a rule book, but there's another little booklet here. At the $16,000 stretch goal, they added this, right? Shakespeare's London and the Dark Lady of the Sonnets, compiled by John Keane. John Keane is the game designer as well, okay? So what this is it's a booklet, the bibliography on the back, that basically runs through some of his sonnets, the places that appear in the game, different people who might have been the Dark Lady, and so on. So it's essentially a quick little history lesson on the history behind all the different things that you're going to run into while you're playing the game, which is a very nice touch. This is the game board. You'll notice it's relatively small, it's fairly easy to use, fairly compact. These are poker-sized cards here to give you a sense of scale and all here. One of the stretch goals that was run into during the game was to give it a linen finish to the board to make it sort of feel nicer. That was the $20,000 stretch goal. And then at the $35,000 stretch goal, they decided to add a graphic that's not game related, but a graphic of Shakespeare's London and such on the back. Doing so helps prevent the warping of the board over time. What you got here, essentially, aside from just the game's name and Shakespeare up at the top, is a place to put a Dark Lady card, which will be whichever Dark Lady it is that turns out to be the true identity in this game. Little spots here to put little tokens that help represent the clues you think you figured out about her identity. And then a bunch of different locations from Shakespeare's London. Bishopsgate, Cornhill, Liberty of the Clink, and so on. And each place has a symbol on it that represents either the church, a commercial area, a playhouse, the riverside, a rural area, one of Shakespeare's residences, or a tavern. And what you're going to do as the Dark Lady moves around London, she's following these paths, one step typically at a time until you get later in the game. And you don't know actually where she is. It's a hidden movement kind of game. But while you don't know exactly where she is necessarily at any given time, you know what type of place she's in, right? So you might know she's at a playhouse, or you might know she's at a commercial area, or at the riverfront, or riverside, I guess they call it in the game. And the idea is that as she moves, you're going to be tracking her possible locations, and since she only ever moves in one step at a time, or at least you can track one step at a time, you'll be able to suss out, like, okay, maybe she's going, we had her at a residence right here, or a residence right here, right? We knew she was one of those two residences, not one of the other residences. And we know that she just moved in one step to the riverside. Well, you can't get from here to here in one step, so she definitely wasn't there in the first place. So if she was here, which seems most likely, because again, we were saying that there were only two to begin with for that particular set of deductions, then that means she either stayed here because it's riverside, or moved here. So now there's only two possible locations she could be at this particular point. And that's important because there are certain things you have to do when you are at the Dark Lady's location to help you gain clues to identify her, though she won't stay still for long. Now, we're not going to go into how to play the game. That's not really what these types of videos are, but I want to give you a sense of what you were looking at. You are going to be represented by a little wooden pawn, and you're going to move from location to location as well. On any given turn, you'll have options to pass, which means you're not doing anything. You have the option to move one space. You have the option to search your current location if you think the Dark Lady is actually there, hopefully getting a clue. Or there are these cards that are known as fog cards you'll be able to play that sometimes give you a benefit, sometimes harm you, and which fill up your deck more and more the more times you search for the Dark Lady. So you have to be kind of judicious with your searching. So as for where the Dark Lady might be located, again, going back to our example a moment ago where maybe she could have been at Cripplegate or at Blackfriars, you would represent that by these little tokens, which is basically a silhouette of the Dark Lady. You would mark where you think she might be. There are 4 of these included with the game. They got upgraded at the $25,000 stretch goal to being silkscreen printed tokens, just round tokens with that symbol on it. But at the 50,000 stretch goal mark, they took it a step further and made these custom cut tokens of the silhouette. Also, speaking of tokens, as you track the Dark Lady, I mentioned there'll be tokens you can put here once you think you've pinned down something that is one of her 3 characteristics. The goal is to get enough clues to suss out what the 3 characteristics are that are unique to this particular Dark Lady. And to track it, you've got these nice little wooden tokens. We have a heart representing her being promiscuous. We have a musical note for musical. We have a ring, meaning she is married. For shame, Shakespeare. We have ourselves a symbol that's a rattle, representing that the woman has children. We have the quill pen, representing she's literary or creative. We have a link, like part of a chain, showing that she has a documented link historically to Shakespeare. And then the symbol of the crown, representing that she has connections with the English court. And each of these has a black side and a gray side. So you can sort of put them out and have a symbol that sort of means maybe versus yes, definitely, as you're trying to suss things out. They're just there to help you figure it out. Just like those silhouette tokens. Technically, you can play without the silhouette tokens, but it just makes it harder to track where she is unless you have a really, really, really good memory. Speaking of those tokens, I would note that they were part of that cardboard upgrade that also affected the box back at the $12,000 stretch goal, but then they jumped from cardboard to wood, silkscreen printed tokens at the $14,000 stretch goal. Then, of course, you're going to have cards. We have mini cards and we have poker-sized cards, both of which are in these nice tuck boxes to help you when you are carrying it around. The tuck boxes were added for both at the $40,000 stretch goal mark. It says Black Sonata by John Keane, has Shakespeare on it, both sides. Nice little tuck box with all of our poker-sized cards in it. The cards themselves were actually some of the first stretch goals. The $8,000 stretch goal gave it increased, thicker card stock, and then the $10,000 stretch goal gave it a linen finish. That's for all the cards, not just the large ones. So you're going to choose a random dark lady that'll be the one who is the true identity for this particular game. And they come in suits. There's 12 cards, 6 suits, 2 each. So you have the bluebell suit, you have the sage suit, the rose suit, the acorn suit. Let's see. You have the thistle suit as you go along, and then you have the oak suit, right, for a total of 12. Each of these cards represents a different person who could have been the Dark Lady. These are the 3 characteristics of that particular candidate to be the Dark Lady. Once you've figured out these 3, that's when you can correctly identify the Dark Lady if it's that individual. What it has here on the side is it tells you, okay, if the Dark Lady, who will be sitting face down over here with only the suit showing, okay, if the Dark Lady is of a particular suit, this tells you how many of the characteristics of this card the real Dark Lady has, because these are going to be your clue cards as well. So the 0/2 means either none of these symbols will match your Dark Lady, or 2 of them will, but not 3, or not 1. 1, 1, 1, meaning definitely 1 will match. Again, 0 or 2 again. And then that one, 2 by itself. 2 of these definitely match a Dark Lady of this particular suit. Okay? You're going to take 2 of the same suit, say oak here. Again, one of them will be your Dark Lady tucked under here. The other one is going to go off to the side, and you're going to put a stack of cards on top of it we'll look at in a minute, and when that stack of cards is gone, you can pull that as one of your clues. Because typically, the necessary final clue, unless you're just going to guess on the last characteristic, will need to come from that card. You might say, well, wait a second, what if I don't get to that card? What happens? You will, because the way to get to it and get the cards removed from on top of it is just to visit each location. And in the playing of pretty much any game, you're going to do that. In fact, you may do it fairly early. Though, realistically, you should probably wait a little longer in the game because every clue you have makes her movement happen faster and she moves more spaces at a time. The rest of your cards go over here, face up, but they have this card, Dark Lady Clues, on top of it. So you can never see the card until you draw it out from under this top card. This card also lets you know how to adjust the difficulty. The mathematics that went into creating this game and making it work kind of boggle my mind, but it's awesome. Okay? It works, even though it seems bizarre. Okay? But what they've got here essentially is all of your suits with a clockwise set of arrows connecting them and dotted lines, essentially a pentagram connecting them. And the idea is that if you want an easier mode, then once you assign the Dark Lady card, you remove the next suit joined to her by a dotted line in the diagram. So if it's a red rose, you remove the bluebell cards because it's the next one connected by the diagram. Normal mode, you play with all 6. Advanced mode, after assigning the Dark Lady card, remove the next suit clockwise from hers, going around the ring there. Kind of a cool way of adjusting difficulty with a very simple manipulation of a deck that's only 12 cards to begin with. So this will be on top of here. And that's all of our poker-shaped cards, our poker-sized cards. You might be saying, wait a second, that's a tuck box. What if I don't want to put it in a tuck box? What if I want to sleeve my cards? They actually give you 3 baggies inside the box so you can use that for sleeving various cards. It's because they won't fit back into those tuck boxes, but they will fit into the inserts. Then we've got our mini cards and our little mini tuck box that looks very much like the other tuck box. There are several different kinds of cards in here as opposed to the poker size cards, which really only go for the one stack. These cards here, and there's a ton of them, there's 32 of these, are called stealth cards. This side represents where she is now. Basically, as you're playing, you're holding this, or it's sitting off to the side. Whatever's showing on top tells you what type of location the Dark Lady's at right now. So right now, she would be at, apparently, a church. So she could be here, or here, or here, or here, somewhere on the map. So if you don't know where she came from and you haven't been able to suss it out at all, you'd have those tokens on all 4 of those spaces. Every turn, you take it 1, okay? You take it 1, you take it 1, and she moves 1 space to somewhere with that next symbol on it. You might say, well, how does the game keep track of where she is? It's kind of crazy, but it's designed with 8 different paths that she could take. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of the tracks, the easier ones on top, the tougher ones on bottom. Okay? Pick a track, take that letter, say the second one or the first one or the third one, whatever, and take all the cards that have something in that spot and put them in alphabetical order with the earlier letters on top, the later letters on the bottom, and then you're going to cut it so that it stays in that order, but you don't know where it's starting at any given time. But it's going to follow that pattern. Then you have what's called your countdown card. Okay? Notice 3, 2, 1, 0, each one with a Shakespeare quote as part of it. Before she starts moving on the first turn, you're going to take this, put the 2 up here, stick it on the bottom, okay? And eventually, as she keeps going and going and going and going and going, this will come up to the top again, and you'll change it to the next lowest number, and the next, and so on. You get 3 times of cycling through this deck before the Dark Lady escapes, and you're stuck. There's no way to find her anymore. You've lost the game. So it follows the pattern of whatever path you chose, but just in case you memorize all 8 of those, which would be nuts, yeah, they've taken it a step further, and in the rule book, it gives you some very easy sequences you could set up, easy sequences, moderate sequences, and hard sequences that you could set up. And on all of them, okay, there's also an option of whether or not she moves each turn, because typically she'll move each turn until you get into some of the more advanced paths when maybe she doesn't. Maybe the symbol is the exact same as where she was all along, and she just stays put that particular turn as you are trying to sort of chase her down. So this is your way of dealing with the hidden movement and whatnot. But there is a bit more to it as well. As you visit locations, you're going to wind up getting 11 location keys. Okay? Each of these is going to represent a location, have an image for it and all, what type of location it is, like what symbols are there on the map, and it'll have a hole in it. The other side just has a little keyhole looking thing and a quote from Shakespeare. Okay? But what you're going to do is search these locations. Now to do that, we've got one more card we need to see, which is the fog card. There are only 10 of these. Okay? But these all have some type of effect that's possible, such as discard this card, move your pawn to a neighboring location, discard a clue of your choice, then draw another from the clue deck, and so on, and so on, and so on, right? So these are going to be sitting off here to the side. So say you're at Eastheap. Maybe you think she's at a place that has a tavern, so you got your 2 symbols there, and you know she was kind of over on this side of the board, but otherwise you're not quite sure where she is. But you know she's at a tavern somewhere, and those are the 2. So to search that location, every time you've gone to a location, you've gotten its card. So we'd say, okay, East Cheap. Okay, here's the card. Okay. I'm going to take my deck of where she's been running, right? She's at a tavern. Take one fog card, stick it underneath that one, and then take this card off. I have just replaced a known movement with a movement where I won't know where she went, only that she did move. Okay? Then I'm going to take this and my location and stack them and then flip it. Okay? This time I got lucky just by sheer chance here. Notice if I look through the keyhole, I see the silhouette of the Dark Lady. I've spotted her. At which point, I'm going to draw one of my clue cards that help me narrow down the attributes of the real Dark Lady. If it hadn't been a correct location, I would have seen something like this, where it's just blank, right? And then I have to go through and count up how many clues I have at this point, and say I've got 3. I have to advance it 1, 2, 3. She've just moved 3 times, running away from my search. Or if I didn't find her, running away from hearing that I was searching for her, which advances her along the path. If there ever comes a point where I have to pull one of these fog cards and I can't, then I'm screwed. Game is over. I lose. There's only 10 of them, so you have to be judicious with your searching. Search when you think you actually know where she is. You also, on your turn, have an option of using one of these fog cards. Again, the deck has to stay with the same number of cards in it. So say I want to use a fog card instead of moving, or instead of searching, or instead of passing. I take a new fog card and stick it underneath to keep the same number of cards, because I'm going to pull off the top one. And then I've got to do whatever it says. It could be good for me, could be bad for me. I've got to do what it says. So it's kind of a gamble to use those, especially given the fact that you're also pulling another fog card off of there to do it. It makes for a fairly quick game, but not one where it's impossible to win. It is still possible, you just have to be good at deducing. So how do you win? You get to a point where you've got at least 3 clue cards of some kind, okay? And then you go through and you find her again. You have to search and find her at your location again. And when you do, instead of doing the normal after searching part where you're advancing the deck and all that kind of stuff, then you make your guess as to her identity. Using, again, which symbols are they and what do they share with your clue cards. You can have more than 3, certainly. If you have been able to narrow it down, you've probably got your little symbols over here on the board to remind you. And you don't have to actually say the person's name. You just have to know these are the symbols. You say, aha, I accuse you. I believe you're the Dark Lady. These are your symbols, Ms. Whatever your name is. If you're right, you won. If not, you lost. You've accused the wrong person and the game is over. Again, it makes for a pretty fun, pretty fast little game. Playing solo games is something that I'm getting more into lately, particularly with smaller games like this one, and I'm really glad I picked this one up. It's bizarre in concept, but really cool and plays well, and the amount of thought and the amount of figuring out patterns and such that had to go into making this game, again, as I said, to me, is mind-boggling. So I'm really, really impressed with the work that Side Room Games did on this one, and I'm looking forward to the next game, Maquis. And of course, we'll check out Maquis when it arrives. For now, this has been Black Sonata, available on the Side Room Games website. Thanks for watching.